The Stronghold series has always had an identity crisis. Not at the beginning though. In fact, the first two games laid out the perfect formula for what the series could have been. But somewhere along the way, things became confused. Games started mixing together, trying to be more than one thing at once, and over time the series slowly lost focus of that unique feeling that made it special in the first place. For me, the original Stronghold and Stronghold Crusader are actually two completely different styles of game. Stronghold 1 focuses on castle management, siege scenarios, and surviving wave after wave of enemy attacks. It was slower, more immersive, and almost plays like a medieval dungeon management game. Honestly, I've always seen it as being closer to Dungeon Keeper or the Dungeon series than traditional RTS. Meanwhile, Stronghold Crusader took the series in another direction entirely. It focused on skirmish mode, fast gameplay, and large-scale battles. It felt closer to games like Age of Empires or Cossacks. And here's the thing, both approaches worked brilliantly, because both games had a clear focus. They became two of the most beloved entries in the entire franchise, and after that clear distinction between the first two games, that's when things started to change. After the clear distinction between the first two games, one playing like a dungeon-style castle simulator and the other like a traditional RTS, then came Stronghold 2. And for me, this is where trying to be both styles at once weakened the experience. Now don't get me wrong, when it comes to castle management, story-driven campaigns, and immersive siege scenarios, Stronghold 2 is absolutely incredible. The game expands on almost everything from Stronghold 1. You have new systems like honour, the ranking system, crime, gong, rat spreading disease, and the lord living a medieval life, hosting banquets, attending church, and interacting with his lady. It expands on castle management in every direction, and honestly felt truly ambitious. The campaign also evolved massively from Stronghold 1. Instead of animated conversations, you get full in-game cutscenes, and multiple missions that take place on the same map, with progress carrying forward between scenarios. It gives the entire game this huge epic scale. And honestly, the peace campaign in Stronghold 2 is still one of my favourite in the entire series, aside from the brutal final mission. It's probably the best economic campaign Firefly ever made. But for me, this is also where the problem starts, because alongside all the deep castle simulation gameplay, Firefly introduced Kingsmaker, the game's skirmish mode, and honestly, it always felt rushed, almost like it was added at the last minute simply because fans expected another Crusader-like experience. The AI struggled badly with more complex castle systems, not using systems like Gong and Rats. Maps were also too small to fully build and expand your castle. Even the taunts felt unfinished, using only audio without the iconic character portrait popping up in the corner.
You are really beginning to annoy me!
Everything about Kingsmaker gives me the impression that Firefly felt obligated to include skirmish, even though the core design of Stronghold 2 was clearly built around campaigns and castle simulation. For me, the game would have been stronger if Firefly fully committed in that direction. They should have brought back invasion mode from Stronghold 1, focused entirely on story campaigns, sieges and castle management, and leaned fully into the slower, more immersive gameplay style, instead of trying to focus on Crusader-style skirmish. And honestly, even mercenaries feel like they were included simply because Crusader had them. I would have loved to see Stronghold 2 double down on weapon production instead, every soldier requiring weapons and workshops just like the original game. Slower gameplay, bigger sieges, more immersion. That's what made Stronghold unique, and Stronghold 2 could have been the perfect foundation for a separate castle simulation branch of the series. Then came Stronghold Legends, and for me, this is where Firefly finally understood the split in the series again, because Legends feels like a direct follow-up to Crusader. The game focuses heavily on skirmish gameplay, simplified castle management, and massively improved combat over Stronghold 2. Unit collision felt better, the AI worked properly, and overall the game feels smoother and more polished. The return of skirmish trials were fantastic too, and honestly some of the most fun in the series. But what really makes Legends special was how it handles factions and mercenaries. Instead of random mercenaries like in Stronghold 2, each civilization has completely unique mythical units, tied to either Arthurian legend, Norse mythology, or dark fantasy. Arthur has bread production and trebs. Evil has no religion at all. Each faction had different traps, units and visual styles. For me, this is the best use of mercenary style gameplay the series has ever had, and unlike Stronghold 2, Legends fully commits to what it wants to be, a fantasy focused skirmish RTS. Even the campaigns reflect this. Instead of trying to replicate the large cinematic campaigns of Stronghold 2, Legends goes back to simpler text and voice cutscenes, while focusing on fun gameplay scenarios, unique units and chaotic battles.
Sometimes the most beautiful of creations can be the most deadly, and the power of desire makes fools of us all.
And honestly, some of the units in this game are insanely fun. Vampire creepers, giants, knights of the round table. The game embraces spectacle and fun. Torts are also improved over Stronghold 2, with still portrait pop-ups and far more dialogues and humour. And honestly, some of my favourite multiplayer matches in the entire Stronghold series happened in Legends. It's chaotic, unbalanced, random, and just ridiculously fun. It's also the only Stronghold game to introduce King of the Hill mode. Legends knew exactly what it wanted to be, and because of that it remains one of the strongest entries in the franchise. This should have been a template moving forward. One branch focused on immersive castle simulation, one branch focused on skirmish and multiplayer RTS gameplay. Then came Stronghold 3. And honestly, I think Firefly actually learned from Stronghold 2 here, because Stronghold 3 clearly tried to become a true sequel to Stronghold 1. No skirmish mode, no mercenaries, a focus on castle management, atmosphere and a story-driven campaign. The direction was absolutely correct. The problem? The execution was disastrous. The game launched in a broken state due to publisher pressures and released with major bugs, economic issues and underdeveloped mechanics. Systems felt simplified compared to Stronghold 2 and the campaign lacked the personality and charm of earlier games. Gone were the in-game cutscenes, instead we got bland drawn cinematics. The story heavily relied on recycled villains like the Wolf and the Sons of the Rat and the Pig, instead of introducing memorable new characters other than the Jackal. But despite all that, I still think the direction of Stronghold 3 was right. And I honestly worry that Firefly looked at the backlash of Stronghold 3 and assumed that removing skirmish was the problem, because I really don't think it was. The issue was that the game was simply not finished. If Stronghold 3 had launched polished, deeper and more immersive, I generally think fans would have looked back at it in a very different light. After the difficult launch of Stronghold 3, Firefly immediately shifted back towards skirmish-focused gameplay with Crusader 2. Campaigns were stripped back heavily in favour of skirmish content. The historical campaigns from Crusader 1 returned, but they feel more like tutorials than true campaigns due to their short natures and pure historic focus.
The Caliph doesn't look too comfortable, does he, sire? You'd think he'd know better than to anger the mighty Saladin.
Castle management became much more simple again. Meanwhile, almost every major update focuses on units and siege equipment. Rangers, Templars, the Warwolf, pretty much every non-industrial focused building was removed. And while Crusader 2 absolutely expands on the formula of Crusader 1, it also struggles with pacing. Gameplay felt slower, building up your economy took longer, combat lacked the speed and energy of the original Crusader, and honestly even the taunts never come close to matching the personality of Crusader 1.
Doomed our family once again. Well done. Thank you very much.
Still, this was clearly Firefly experimenting with the split in the franchise again. Stronghold 3 focused on campaigns and castle management. Crusader 2 focused on skirmish and RTS gameplay. It actually looked promising, and then came the next game. Stronghold Warlords is where I think Firefly fully committed to skirmish as the primary identity of the series. Instead of returning to the castle-focused gameplay of Stronghold 1, 2 and 3, Warlords continued the direction of Crusader 2. Story missions feel more like historic trials, mercenary-style units return again, and while the Warlord system is interesting, it also shifts focus away from castle sieges and spreads combat across the entire map. For me, this is the first Stronghold game that truly abandons the balance between the two identities of the franchise, and honestly, I think that's a shame, because Warlords had massive potential. Imagine if Firefly had used the Asian setting to create a huge story-driven campaign focused on castle life, sieges, invasion scenarios, and economic building. Imagine massive Chinese castles, layered production chains, complex city management, political systems. Instead, the game feels more like a refined version of Crusader 2. Better graphics, better unit collision, better taunts, more polished gameplay, but still heavily focused on skirmish. And for me, this is exactly why the series should split properly. Warlord should have been a castle management game, then afterwards Firefly could have released a mythology-focused spin-off inspired by Chinese and Japanese mythology, essentially a spiritual successor to Legends. Honestly, I think a fantasy Asian-themed Legends 2 sounds incredible. The possibilities would have been endless.
I am the Great Stone Dragon! Good morning! I will go forth and fetch Mulan! Did I mention that I was the Great Stone Dragon?
With the next game heavily rumoured to be Stronghold the Dark Ages, I really hope Firefly returns to the formula of Stronghold 1, 2 and 3. I want bigger focus on castle management, story-driven war and peace campaigns, proper invasion scenarios, more complex production chains, better traps and castle defences, deeper siege gameplay, and honestly, I hope mercenaries disappear completely. Bring back full weapon production for every unit, slow the pacing down, make building armies feel meaningful again. Bring Stronghold back to its roots as an immersive medieval castle simulator, because right now we already have Crusader Definitive Edition for players who want classic skirmish gameplay. Now it's time for Firefly to revisit what made Stronghold 1 feel so unique. But will Firefly risk it? Who knows? Modern RTS developers seem increasingly obsessed with multiplayer and competitive skirmish gameplay. We've seen it happen not only with Stronghold, but even with Age of Empires. And yet many RTS players still primarily play single player experiences. So what do you guys think? Do you agree the Stronghold series should split into two distinct styles of game? Or do you prefer the modern focus on skirmish and multiplayer we've seen in games like Crusader 2 and Warlords? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more Stronghold and related RTS content. And also check out the Discord in the description below to join a growing Stronghold community. Thanks for watching.